بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone, and welcome to a new session from this new program, the You Ask and We Answer. I do apologize for the sisters and brothers who I did not answer their questions last week. So I will start with one of these questions and then I'll come to your questions. Okay, this question says, can I use, what is the ruling of using the eye drops or the nose drops, the solutions? The Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah. The rule of this mas'ala, because this is to do with Ramadan, I mean the ruling of, I mean the question was asked, is that will break the fast or not? That's the ruling, although it's not really mentioned in there, but this is what it can be understood. So is it allowed for me during the fast of Ramadan, during the daytime of Ramadan, to use the eye drops or the nose drops? The rule of that is the scholars, they differ in this issue, and I just need to make the persons ask aware of the main issue in here. They're looking into the iftar when a person becomes like muftir is something, it goes through the throat and goes to al-jawf, which is the stomach. But how that thing, the substance, if I may call it, enters into the throat, into the body, into inside the al-jawf, which is the stomach. So they agreed that if something goes through the mouth, then will be an iftar. And however, now we have the nose and we have the eyes. And here where there is a difference between the scholars. So some of them, they're saying the nose and the eyes are connected with the mouth. So they will all go to the throat, and from the throat. Can you hear me, everyone? Okay. So a number of scholars, they consider that the drops through the eyes and the nose will go through the throat, and the as-sa'im or the person will even feel the wetness of that in the throat, and therefore after that can taste it as well, and it can swallow it and goes into the mouth, into the stomach. And other scholars are saying no, because it's not a main entrance, it's not an entrance for the food, and the entrance for the food is the mouth, and other than that will not be considered. So that is the main ikhtilaf between the scholars. The way that, or the opinion that I look into that myself, is we have to be careful first, because these are the solution that we're using for, because the contact lenses, it can be for changing the color of the eyes, it can be because of maybe the sight itself. So if you have glasses, I would say better to use them in Ramadan, so not to use the contact lenses, so you don't need to put these drops, and you don't really need them. If it was for changing the eyes and for beauty or something like that, well, I would say try to avoid that in Ramadan. If it was for other reason, it might be for the dryness of the eyes, and a person wants to wet and the itchiness of the eyes or the nose, and they need that as a medicine. If it is possible, they do that during the night time once, and then before Fajr another time as well will be better. If now we come into the solution that there is no other way except that the person has to do it during the daytime because it's hot, because it's dry. The scholar said you can use the drops, but when it comes into the throat, don't swallow it, and try to spit it out, and that is better. And this is the view of even in the Hanbali madhab, which is the madhab says is muftir, and also the Maliki says you could be a muftir if you use these drops. they're saying some of the late Hanabila muhaqqiqeen, amongst them Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, I mean, they recommend that you spit that and you don't swallow it. Just getting out of ikhtilaf. And the Hanafi school, they're saying there is no, it will not break your iftar. But I would say, don't take it easy. Don't think, because there is no clear evidence in here. It's an ijtihad from the scholars. So you have to take the ihtiyat in here, be cautious with your fasting. And it's a ibadah, it's one of the pillars of Islam, and you have to be careful with that. Try to avoid it, as I explained earlier, as much as you can. But if you are in a situation that you have to use it, then in the situation use what these late scholars said. So you can use the drop, and then when comes the taste of it in the throat, just spit it out and don't swallow it. Otherwise, try to avoid it. Wallahu a'lam, because the taste of it, it's kind of water. And I mean, the person who asked the question himself said the solution itself is kind of a water. So if it was water, then there's a big doubt in here that you are making an iftar. So because it goes through the throat and goes into the stomach. So that's a water, and you are softening and you are moisturizing your throat, and the throat goes down and it goes into the stomach. So you have to be careful with that. And Allah knows best. Okay, I'll take one of the questions, that if anyone has a question, and then I'll go back into my questions in here. Try to take one question from me, one question from there.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Sheikh, especially when someone is dying and people, they make a khatam for the mutawafa. So I don't know, is it a bid'ah or is it okay? Or the sawab only received to the Mayat person?
Okay. Okay, Brother Yusuf was asking about the reading Quran after the death of a person. The family gets together and read the Quran in the third day, sometimes in the day 40, and called the 40th day after the death of the person. Is that permissible in Sharia? And if it was permissible, what is the ruling of that? Is it mustahab? Is sunnah? So what is the ruling of that? And when we do that, is the thawab, what is the ruling of that thawab? The reward will go to the person who will benefit from that. Well, we believe, alhamdulillah, the answer to this question, we believe that the deceased can benefit from those who are still alive. But the benefit, what can be received by a deceased as a reward, is based on what the Sharia mentioned, because this is related to the deen, related to the religion, and we cannot say anything about the religion that a person can receive a reward without having an evidence, without having a proof of that. And looking into the Sharia, we know that the deceased can benefit from, let's say, Hajj, because the Rasulullah the Al-Khathamiyya, she asked Rasulullah about the Hajj, and Rasulullah allowed her. Umrah, same rule as the Hajj. We know the deceased can, if there is some fast they did not make it, a person can make a fast and can benefit the person with that. General sadaqat, meaning here إطعام الطعام, feeding the people, giving clothing the people, giving any type of charities, giving money, giving any type of kind of charities, and passing the reward of that to the deceased person, and that's all is valid, and it is recommended, especially to the close family, that they should do that to their beloved ones. However, when it comes to the reading of the Quran, we don't have Rasulullah sallallahu died, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and we did not have a single narration that his beloved daughter Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, and she was very sad. We did not have one single relation that she read the Quran upon or with the intention that to pass the reward to Rasulullah sallallahu, nor the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum. You might say Rasulullah doesn't need this reward. Yes, true. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave all his sins. But we know that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, after that, Umar ibn Khattab, Uthman ibn Affan, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhum, all of them, when they died, when they passed away, radiallahu ta'ala anhum jami'an, we didn't have one single narration that their beloved family who remained after them, they made khatim al-Quran, or they read the Quran, they intended to pass the reward to them. But however, we know that they did give charities, they made umrah, they made hajj, and that's especially with Aisha radiallahu anha towards her brother. And we know that this is something that it happened between the Sahaba, so passing the reward to their beloved ones by giving charities on their behalves. However, reading the Quran, it is not the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if it was not the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then will be amongst the al-muhdathat, amongst the new actions the Muslims that invented after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And because reading the Quran and passing the reward to the others has an asl in Sharia, then this kind of muhdatha, this kind of innovation will be considered under the bid'ah idafiyya. Al-bid'ah al-idafiyya is a type of a bid'ah that its asl is established in the Sharia, but the way how it's been performed, the way how it's been made, practiced by the people is not the way how Rasulullah made it and practiced it. And because of that, we consider it as a bid'ah. So I would advise the family of a deceased, they should not make khatim of Al-Quran after the beloved ones died, not in the 3rd day nor in the 40th day. There is no need to do that. If you would like to do that, better than this, whether on the 3rd day, after that, any day, you don't need to connect that with the specific days. And that's also another mas'ala, making a specific day, 40th day or 30th day or all of that. There's no evidence about all of this. So we don't have evidence. Sharia says that when after 40 days after the person died, then you need to do this. We don't have that. You don't need to wait until the 40th days. If you really love your whoever died from family or friends, then you just as soon as you can pass and give a sadaqah, make a charity, make umrah, hajj, whatever that you can do, you do it, and without waiting until the 40th day or, as we said, 3rd day. You don't need to wait until that time, and you can do anything else better than reading the Quran. Just feed people. There's so many charities here. They collect your charity, your donation, and feed them. Feed the poor, and give clothes to the poor, and do something like that. That will be acceptable, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, and Allah knows best. Okay, I'll come into a question from here. This question says, in Taraweeh prayers, when we are reading the longer surahs from the Quran, we stop in between. So when we start reading the surah in the next raqqa, do we have to start with the basmala or the isti'adha, saying a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, or both? This is when a person praying alone at home. So just to make the question clear to those who are listening, so a person reading, praying Taraweeh, and when you read Taraweeh, as you know, you have long surahs, and Muslims and people, they intend to break these long surahs and make in each rak'ah reading a number of pages or number of verses, and then the following rak'ah you follow up from where you stopped, and you continue like that until the end. You may need to know, brothers and sisters, that Rasulullah in his qiyam, he never, and we don't have evidence of Rasulullah, he like broke the surahs, read half of the surahs and then the other half. So he read in his qiyam, he read Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Imran, Surah Al-Nisa, and that is the practice of the Salaf as well. However, we're not saying he is not allowed. It is allowed. Of course, it is permissible to break the surah between the raka'at that you are praying during the Qiyamul Layl. And whether you say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, at the beginning of the surah, it is recommended, is mustahab to read A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ وَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. So وَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. Whenever you want to read the Quran, and that was at the beginning or in the middle, then say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. For the ulama, they recommended to read أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم at the beginning of your reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, and then Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Because, and you know the ikhtilaf between the scholars in saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, whether it's an ayah from Surah Al-Fatiha or not an ayah from Surah Al-Fatiha, and then read Surah Al-Fatiha. Then after that, if you're starting the surah from the beginning, you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. However, the sunnah to say that quietly, in the same way as you do that in Surah Al-Fatiha. The isti'adha, A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, both of them, they should be said quietly. Even if you're praying Taraweeh alone, it is recommended, it's a sunnah to read loudly, to read jahri, because that is one of the features of, let's say, Qiyamul Layl and Salatul Layl. One of its description, you read out loud. So if you are a person reading Taraweeh alone at home, you can read out loud. And the A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim should be read quietly, as Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu ta'ala anhu described the salah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He described the salah of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar, Uthman, Ali. He said, I have never ever heard them saying loudly A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and all the time they say that quietly. So similar to that, you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim with the following surah quietly, you don't say it loudly. Now if you are in the middle of the surah, now if you look, just to add some knowledge into the persons asked the question, if we look into the qira'at which is known as the Nafi' or Asim or and so on, Ibn Kathir and Hamza and all of that, if you look into the the Qurra, they recommended, they look into the qira'ah that you're using, whether Shatibiyya or Tayyibah, from a Shatibiyya way or Tayyibah way, and they're saying that you are allowed, or it is permissible to read with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, or it is permissible to leave it out. So they allow you both. However, we don't have an evidence that suggested the Sahaba or the Sahaba or the Tabi'in after that they read Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in the middle of the surah. And however, if you do that, as our ulama said, it is permissible, but you read that quietly. So I wouldn't say you should read it because sunnah. We don't have a sunnah from Rasulullah about this, because Rasulullah read the surahs from the beginning, and we can't say you shouldn't read that because there is an asl, and reading Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim as a starting of reciting, you can say that, but should be that quietly, not loudly. Wallahu alam. And if you leave it out also, you are not missing any sunnah by not doing that, and you're not committing any sin by not reading Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim after the Surah Al-Fatiha. If we look into the view of Imam Abu Hanifa, it's a beautiful view. He said Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Now you're reading alone. You read Surah Al-Fatiha, you complete Surah Al-Fatiha, and then you get to start another surah, which is wherever you stop in the middle of the surah. If you don't read Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it feels that you're connecting this new part of the surah that you're reading is part from Surah Al-Fatiha. And because of that, Imam Abu Hanifa said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim between the surahs was revealed as a separate ayah to differentiate, to make like a divider and separation between the surahs, to show that this surah is finished, completed, and this surah is starting a new surah, except Surah At-Tawbah, as you all know. And Surah At-Tawbah, some ulama, they considered as part of Surah Al-Anfal, and the ulama agreed that we should not read Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim at the beginning of Surah At-Tawbah, and Allah knows best. Okay, let me take one question from you, brothers, and I'll continue with my questions if you don't have any question there.
Can I have a question, please, Sheikh?
Yes, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's regarding the start of the Suhoor time. You know, there's like the 18-degree calendar, and there's one or two others. It becomes a little bit confusing when you have like 2 or 3 different timings. So what would be your advice in this situation?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My advice, as you said, exactly as you described it. So basically, just the question, because recorded, the question is the starting of the Fajr time, and therefore based on that, it is the ending time of a Suhoor, and what time that I should have my sahur. And also related to that, also the last part, the last third of the night as well. So all of that is connected to that. What we see in our community, and some people are promoting the 18 degrees and other degrees and going into different views about that and suggesting this or suggesting the other views as well. My opinion in that, I would say I'm a person who did not have the ability to go and check and make sure that the 18 degrees is the correct one, or 16 degrees is correct, or below that is the correct one. I don't have that ability to go outside into the countryside or into the sea and check all of that, whether it's correct or wrong. And those who checked and made that, they are honest, they are upright brothers and people who did this effort. However, also the other view was suggested and made by the upright and authentic and trustworthy people as well. Instead of going to all that confusion, if you are a person, you checked all of that and you are sure about what you've seen and you checked it and you have that tools of making this decision, then you should follow what you come up to it. You should not follow what the people are saying. But instead of creating the fitna, you should not do that outside in front of the public, because you reach to this result by your effort and you went out and you got the tools of making this ijtihad. However, the rest of the community, my advice to you is to follow the mainstream. What we have in here, it is Regent's Park Masjid, and with their calendar and with all the masajid are following the Regent's Park calendar, and with a few minutes with some of our Asian community trying to make it 3 minutes before, just out of ihtiyat, trying to stop people of eating and drinking just before the adhan of the fajr. I would say follow the mainstreams, follow your masjid, your local masjid. So if you are in an area who are following the not what we have in our main masjid in London, then follow them, because that's your community. However, the community that are following the calendar of Regent's Park, and that is the calendar of Al-Qura, then Allahu A'lam, you should follow that, and you should not create any fitna, should not create any misunderstanding between the symbol and the people who are all elderly and they don't know the difference between all of this. And Allah knows best. Allahu A'lam. Okay, I'll take one question from here. Actually, this question was 2 weeks ago, so I'm sorry for that. I completely forgot to answer this question. The question says, is there any special reward or special hadith in reading Surat Al-Waqi'ah, reading Surat Tabarak, reading Surat Ar-Rahman, reading Surat As-Sajda? So I think the person is trying to find if there is any virtues, any fada'il for Surat Al-Waqi'ah, or Surat Ar-Rahman, Surat As-Sajda, or Surat Al-Mulk. With regards to Surat Al-Waqi'ah, in all these surahs that you mentioned, there are ahadith which are not authentic, and there are ahadith which are it can be some of them authentic and some of them at least acceptable. So let's start with Surah Al-Waqi'ah. Surah Al-Waqi'ah, and I'm sure that it is something common and common amongst our Asian community. Reading Surah Al-Waqi'ah, it will be, if you read Surah Al-Waqi'ah at night time or daily, you will not going to get or affected with any calamity. And this is not authentic hadith. What was narrated and it can be considered as acceptable with regards to Surah Al-Waqi'ah is what Rasulullah ﷺ said: "Shayyabatni suratu Hud wal-Waqi'ah wal-Mursalat wa amma yatasa'alun." So shayyabatni means gave me the gray hair. Shayyabatni Surat Hud, Al-Waqi'ah, Al-Mursalat wa amma yatasa'alun. and وَإِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. These are the surahs that Rasulullah mentioned them in this hadith. Because of the ayat that mentioned in this surah, ayat of describing the Jahannam, describing the ahwal, the events of Yawm al-Qiyamah, and because of that Rasulullah said shayyabatni. It means the information and that the surahs are mentioning are really, really heavy and makes the person to think about them. And when you be worried and thinking, that's when you're losing your black hair and goes into gray hair. The hadith has some weaknesses, but the ulama they looked into different narrations of this hadith, and it can be acceptable, at least hasan. That's what we have as far as I know in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, and can be considered as authentic. Other than this, there is nothing authentic in Surah Al-Waqi'ah. Going to Surah Ar-Rahman, I don't know any authentic narration with regards to Surah Ar-Rahman and what people narrating لكل شيء عروس وعروس القرآن Surah Ar-Rahman. For everything there is bride, and the bride of Surah of the Quran is Surah Ar-Rahman. It's not authentic. This goes back into a story. Nuh ibn Abi Maryam, one of the great worshippers during the time of the narrating the hadith, he found, and this is the 2nd century, he found people busy learning the fiqh of Imam Abi Hanifa, and that's in Kufa in Iraq. And he found the people are busy learning the stories of the seerah and the history from Muhammad ibn Ishaq in Medina. So he decided to fabricate a hadith about the fada'il, the virtues of the Quran. And he made a very long hadith. This hadith is divided to every surah. Every surah in the Quran, 114 surahs in the Quran, he made one narration or narrations to highlight the virtues of that surah. All of that to encourage people to read the Quran, to go back to the Quran. When the scholars of hadith, they followed the hadith that was narrated and became famous, they got until the end to Nuh ibn Abi Maryam. And when they said to him, did you hear this hadith from your shaykh? And he said, no, this hadith, I made it up. Because when I say, I found people, as I mentioned earlier, he mentioned the reason that made him to fabricate this hadith. So we have to be careful of these fabrications. That's with Surah Ar-Rahman. With Surah Yasin, same thing. There are a number of ahadith which are weak, very weak, and fabricated ahadith about Surah Yasin. Amongst these fabricated ahadith or weak ahadith is لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ, for everything there is heart. And the heart of the Quran is Surah Yasin. And they mention that if you read Surah Yasin, you'll be saved, and if you're reading Surah Yasin, and they mention a number of rewards, a number of virtues about Surah Yasin. As far as the ulama of hadith concerned, is all what is mentioned about the fada'il, the virtues of Surah Yasin, are not authentic, with an exception to one hadith. Again, with this hadith is not very authentic. However, looking into the chains of this hadith, the ulama, they considered it possibly can be hasan. And what is it? Rasulullah said, اقرأوا ياسين على موتاكم ولقنوها موتاكم. So read Surah Yasin upon your deceased, your people who's going to die. And the words in Arabic was understood. على موتاكم means the people after they die, they read Surah Yasin. And that's the practice of our people nowadays. What they do after a person dies, they read Surah Yasin. How is going to benefit? How is that person going to benefit from Surah Yasin? Already the soul is out from the body, and there's no benefit of that surah. So the correct understanding of this hadith, you read Surah Yasin upon the person who is receiving, who's about to die. The person at the sakaratul maut needs to hear Surah Yasin, because Surah Yasin reminds the person of the reality of this life, reminds the person how he's been created, reminds the person of a Jannah, reminds the person of the hellfire and all of that, and reminds the person of that you are going to a Rabb, a Lord who's Ghafoor Rahim, and that will be recommended to read it upon the person at the time of death, but not after that. And other than this, not authentic. Going into Surah because the question is in all these surahs. Going to Surah Al-Mulk. Surah Al-Mulk, same as in the other surahs, we have a hadith which are not authentic, mention about Surah Al-Mulk, and we have a number of hadith which are authentic. So some of the authentic hadith that reading, Rasulullah said, Inna fil Qur'ani suratan, indeed that in the Quran there is a surah, 30 verses, if you read it, it will be shafi' for you yawm al-qiyamah. And he said that is Tabarak alladhi biyadihi al-mulk. So one of the verses of Surah Al-Mulk is that will be a shafi' for the person yawm al-qiyamah. If you look into this hadith, the whole Quran is a shafi' for the person. You don't need, there's no really something specific about Surah Al-Mulk. Why? Because all the Quran can be shafi' for the reader, for the reciter of the Quran. So any part of the Quran you read it will be a shafi' for you yawm al-qiyamah. The other hadith about Surah Al-Mulk, that it will be protection from the grave, from the punishment in the grave, if you read that every night. Rasulullah said, Man qara Surah Al-Mulk fi kulli laylatin takunu lahu hirzan aw himayatan wa hifdhan min adhabi al-qabr. So it will be, if you read that every night, will be a protection for the person from the punishment of the grave. And we know the punishment of the grave is a haqq. And there are many deeds and many actions that we can do them to protect ourselves from that punishment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all from this. These are the surahs that the question were mentioned in the question, and Allah knows best. Okay, any questions before I go into the other question in here? Yeah, any questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you, yes.
I just wanted to ask, so in the last 10 days we always want to make the most, but sometimes women might feel like they're left out, say if they can't fast or pray or tarawih. So I just wanted to know what's the best way to kind of not feel this way.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, you're going to talk about something that we will talk about it later on today. As you know, we're having a session about the last 10 days. But khair, inshallah, it's good because possibly I might not mention that there. And so the question was, women with regards to the last 10 days, 10 nights of Ramadan, as we know that we should do our best. And for the females, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it written upon the daughters of Adam that they can be affected with menses, they can be not be able to do much, do in the same way that the males can do. Meaning here, reading the Quran, reading the salah, praying, make qiyamul layl and all of that. In my opinion, and Allah knows best, with regards to the salah, we don't have any, females don't have any choice with that. So if a lady is in her menses, can't pray, that is no doubt about that. However, when you come into reading the Quran and making dhikr, in my opinion, a female, even in that situation, in the situation of the menses, can read the Quran and can make the dhikr. There is no clear evidence. There's no clear evidence and there's no authentic evidence. So clear and authentic evidence suggests that the females, those who are in menses, even those who are in janaba, even those who are in the janaba means the state that when they need to have a ghusl, as Ibn Hazm mentioned in his Muhalla, and he answered all the qiyasat and all the evidence of the Hanafi school and the others about this mas'ala. So it is allowed for the lady to read the Quran. Out of respect, cover your hand with something, hold the mushaf and read Quran. Reading Quran, so do not let these days goes when the malaika come down, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes down and wants to see the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you want to show to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I deserve your maghfirah, you want to show to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I deserve your freedom from the hellfire, you should be in a situation that you do something. And it will not be fair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of all mankind, the creator of males and females, and He's the one who Rasulullah ﷺ said encouraged the people to do their best in the last 10 days. How he encouraged them, and he says to them, don't read Quran, don't read Taraweeh, don't make dhikr and all of that. And means that they don't do anything. They can't do anything. And if you look into the details mentioned by some fuqaha, it has no evidence, has no base, except that out of respect to the Quran, respect to the Sunnah, the Hadith, the Dua of Rasulullah. But you are in a situation in a very important and valuable time. If this time goes in the year, you can't really get any other better nights than these nights. So my advice to you, my dear sister, and all the sisters, that do not let this time go, even if you are in that situation. Read Quran, make dhikr, make dua, make istighfar, and use all of this, and don't stop really. Yeah, praying, yes, you can't do that. Fasting, you can't do that. But don't let this time to go with no use. So sit at night time, and especially the last third of the night, and make your dhikr, and make a dua, and raise your hands, supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, read Quran as much as you can, and make istighfar, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. هل من سائل? Is there anyone who's asking me? فَأُجِيبَهُ. هل من مستغفر? Is there anyone there is asking for forgiveness? I will forgive him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the offer there to everyone, to everyone. So really it's a time